Let's refer to the example image that are provided here, and let's do this drawing techniques drawing here on CAD. You can also do this drawing on your paper. Please follow along, and simultaneously you will learn how to do the drawing on CAD and on paper using your drawing instruments. So this will improve your drawing skills on paper as well, and you can also improve your CAD skills. Let's start with the drawing. So first of all, as always, we're going to make sure that all of our layers are set up correct, that our drawing canvas is prepared, so that when we start drawing, we can just do the required selections as needed. First, we're going to go to Options, Drawing Setup. At Display, we just check nothing's going to change there. At Grid, I just make sure that it's on Ortho and that my spacing is 5 by 5. I am not showing my grid. At Advanced, there's nothing that I want to change here. On Space Units, I make sure it's on Metric. I make sure that it's absolute on a scale of 1 to 1, that all my units are set to millimeters. I only use a precision of 1, so that means a decimal of 1, and then I make sure it's set to decimal, and the rest I leave as it is. Angle, although I make sure is that the precision is also at 1. And layers, here is the important part where we want to make sure that we've got all the layers that we require. So we have a dimensions layer, we have a constructions layer, we have a hatching layer, hidden detail layer, center lines layer, labels layer, symbols, so if we need it. We have a memo layer, we have an outline or solid layer, we have a grid layer and a text layer. So these are just the basic setup of layers that I have. Obviously you can add more if you want, or take some of them away, but the ones that I would recommend that you keep is your dimensions layer, your constructions layer, your hatching layer, your hidden detail layer, your center lines layer, your outline or solids layer, and then your text layer. Those are the ones that I definitely recommend that you will keep. Now, for the purpose of this drawing, I'm going to set my outlines to be 1 millimeter, but as I have said before, that when you draw, make sure that your outlines and solids layer is set to 0.5. The reason for this is so that when you do the print out, this will print out neat and proper on the actual paper printout. But for the purpose of the demonstration, a 0.5 will not show as clear on this recording, and therefore I'm going to, for the demonstration purpose, set my solid outlines to 1 millimeter so that it is just that much clearer for you to see the outlines. Once I'm happy with everything that I've set up here, I'm going to click on OK. Now I'm ready to start drawing. So the first thing I will do is go to my constructions tool or the waterline tool, and I'm going to start with drawing a horizontal construction line just as a starting guideline, and then going back to that I'm going to select the vertical construction lines tool and then also place a vertical constructions guideline there. Now, as you know, I've said this in previous recordings that I like to refer to this as a waterline, but in CAD they refer to this as construction lines. Now, obviously this waterline is printed into the canvas and it's indefinite in length, but when we draw on paper we will refer to the light lines that we draw as planning for our drawing as construction lines, not water lines. But so I just want to make sure you are familiar with the differences between water lines and construction lines, although in CAD they refer to the water lines as construction lines. Now that we have our starting point, I want to create, as per the example image, the layout of the outlines. So firstly I'm going to make sure that I measure with my circle tool from the starting point a distance of 80 millimeters. So I select at the starting point with my circle tool. Now I always use the construction circular tool to measure, as you would know from my previous videos, and then I'm going to set that to a distance of 80 millimeters. Now at the bottom left of the screen, you can see I've typed in 80 millimeters at radius, and if you tap, it will go to the diameter, and if you tap again, it will give you the circumference of that circle. And if you continue to tap through, you will eventually come back to where it says radius, and I'm going to press enter on that. Now I've set that, so I know I've got a X value of 80 and a Y value of 80. So now I'm going to make use of my vertical construction line and go to that intersection point and plot another water line as a guide, and then also use the horizontal waterline tool / construction tool and snap off on that intersection at the bottom. Now I've got a square of 80 by 80, and these water lines serve as my guideline, and the guideline will then just be used to give me a reference on which I will then actually draw my real construction lines on paper. I will again look at my reference image to see what are the measurements that I want to start drawing with. I'm going to use my circular construction tool to measure with, and I'm starting at the top left hand corner, and I'm going to measure off the 30 millimeters that I need on that part of the drawing and press enter. Then I move to the bottom left corner and I'm again going to measure off 30 millimeters, and so I will do also for the remaining two corners, 30 millimeters each. As per the reference image, we can now draw in some of the solid lines. So I'm going to go to the solid line option and I'm going to select the solid line. Now immediately I'm going to go and look at my layers, and I'm going to select the right layer onto which I would draw. So I want to draw a solid line, so that's why I'm going to select the solids layer, and I'm going to make sure that all my layers are set by layer. So all these functionalities and properties of that layer has to be set to by layer. Now with that sorted, I'm going to start with the first lines that I need to draw, and it will continue to draw. Now here's a pro tip: just make sure that you have your hand always close to the escape key so that you can click off of that once you've drawn your lines. And then in DoubleCAD, because this is a light version or the free version, you every time have to go and select again the tool that you want to use for the next step. So I'm going to select the line tool again, and I'm going to snap to each one of the reference point and escape out of that, and I will do this for the remaining two as well. And now that I've escaped out of that, we have our outlines here as per the reference image. Now we want to draw some guidelines onto which we can draw the angular parts of our reference image. So therefore I'm going to go to the constructions tool or the waterline tool, and I'm going to select the angular construction line, and I'm going to snap to this reference point so that I have the waterline as a guide. So I'm going to go back to my waterline tool, select the construction lines tool, and then from this corner going to draw a waterline that's going to cross over and press escape. Now I have the two diagonal guidelines that I need as per my reference image. There are different ways that we can now draw these diagonal bars that are in the middle of our drawing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my circular tool, and I'm going to place it right in the middle intersection of my water lines, because I know that the thickness of these diagonal bars will be 10 millimeters, which means if I were to use my circle tool, I can now say a radius of 5 millimeters and place that as a reference. Now what I'm going to do is select from the waterline tool the perpendicular line. So I'm going to use this one over here as my perpendicular line, and I'm going to click on this one, and I am going to snap 5 millimeters away from the middle. I'm going to again click on that one, and on the other side 5 millimeters away. That will give me the guideline that I can use to draw in my solid lines later. And to draw the parallel lines to this water line, which is my middle line in this case, I'm going to select one of those lines. So I have to select my perpendicular tool again, and I'm going to click on one of them, and now I'm going to snap to that 5mm distance. Again, use the perpendicular tool and snap to that edge of that circle. Now I know that from one end to the other we have a 10mm distance on these bars that go diagonally. Referring to our example image or reference image, I'm now going to set up more guidelines. But before I do that, I want to draw in some of the actual construction lines just to give me a guide, because I would like to delete or clear these water lines that are imprinted on the canvas. Now on paper you would have drawn all of these constructions as light constructions with your compass and with your drawing equipment, but on CAD I use these water lines as a reference and guide, and therefore it will just require a couple more steps from me, whereas on paper you have already drawn these light construction lines now on your paper. So for CAD we are now going to select the line tool, and I'm going to go and select on my layers my constructions layer that I've already set up. Make sure everything says by layer, and then I'm going to draw light construction lines here on those water lines as a reference. Now obviously these are not my final lines, not my solid lines, and therefore I'm using the constructions layer, and I'm going to just draw in construction lines as a reference and as part of my planning and as part of my help to do the drawing. The next thing that I want to do is I want to see if there's any more construction lines that I need to draw, and for that I'm first going to go and draw in guidelines with my waterline tool, and I'm going to snap off there and over there, and with the vertical construction line I'm going to snap off there and there. This will help me with the planning, so I'm trying to do my workflow in such a way that I cover as much in one step as possible. I'm going to refer to the reference image again, and I'm going to draw in what I can draw solid from the start. So the first one that I want to draw in solid is with my arc tool, and for the arc tool we go to this selection here, and we will use this one that says center start length, and I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go and select my solids layer now because it's a solid line that I want to draw. And on my reference point there I'm going to duplicate what I see on my reference image, and please remember when you draw an arc it will always go anti-clockwise. So I'm going to start my reference there, and then I'm going to click on this snap at the end of this vertex, and I'm going to swing it all the way upwards anti-clockwise, and then snap onto that point. Now I don't need that full circle, I want that part there as an open part as per the reference image, so I need to clear that. On paper you would have just drawn the solid arc up to the line there and the other part of the arc onto the line over there, but on CAD I can now go and do a split entity, and that means I select the split entity tool at the top, and then I will select the arc that I want to split, and I will select that point, and I will again select the split entity tools, again select the arc that I want to split and click off on that. Now I'm going to zoom in so that I have a better look. I'm going to use the selector tool, and I'm going to select the part of the line that I want to erase, and I'm just going to press delete on my keyboard, and it's gone. And there, now I have that arc as per the reference image. I again am going to refer to my example image, and I see that I need another construction. So on paper you will also do this construction that I'm going to do now. I'm going to select the constructions layer, And for the part of the drawing here at the top right, I need to draw a light construction line over there and escape out of that. You will also draw that on your paper because you need this center point here that is created. And now I'm going to go back to my arc tool, and I'm going to make sure I've selected the correct arc tool, and I'm going to go to my solids layer, and then I'm going to place my compass on paper and in CAD on this intersection that I've created, and I'm going to stretch it. Remember, it's working anti-clockwise, so I have to go to this reference point, and I'm going to click on that and draw the arc to the alternative reference point. So once I have that, I go again to my split entity tool. Now on paper you would just not have drawn in that solid part, or you can erase it afterwards, but then it's always better just to draw it up to where you need on paper. Here on CAD I'm going to now zoom in, and I'm going to select the arc that I want to erase, create the reference point where I want to cut it off, again select the line that I want to erase and click the reference point that I want to delete, and then with the selected tool active I'm going to select that part of the line and delete that, and that will give me the desired result. Let's zoom out of that. Now we have done quite a bit of our drawing. Again, we look at the reference image, and I'm going to go and use my line tool, and I'm making sure I'm on the solids layer, everything is by layer, and I'm going to draw this bottom left part now up to that line, and I'm going to escape out of that. Again, select the line tool, go to the reference point, make sure that I snap properly there, and then draw into the next reference point where I want it and escape out of that, and that will give me that part of the drawing based on our reference image. For the bottom right hand part of the drawing, I'm going to show you an alternative way of drawing here on CAD so that I don't have to use the split tool. However, you can do it if you want, but I'm going to select the angular tool again, the constructions angular tool, go to this reference point and draw an angular construction line like that and escape out of it. Now I have a reference line, because in CAD you always need reference lines to snap to and to create intersections or reference points. So now I can go to my line tool and make sure it's on the solids layer, everything is set by layer, and I'm going to zoom in, and from this reference point I'm going to snap and draw up to that one. So I would have drawn through there and then erase in the middle, but now what we do is, because we have a reference line, I can snap to there and escape out of it, and then use the line tool again, and from that intersection just draw another segment of the line, and that will create for me that desired result. I'm now going to complete the last parts of the drawing by selecting my solid line and making sure that I'm on the solids layer, and I'm going to zoom in, snap to that reference point, snap to that reference point, and the last one, and escape out of it. On paper you can now draw in those lines solid with your instruments. I'm going to again select the line tool, snap to those reference points and draw the desired lines up to where I need it. Once I finish there, I escape, select the line tool again from the reference point to the intersections, and once I'm done I press escape out of that, do the final one. So from here to there and finish off on that one. Let's zoom out, and now we have duplicated our reference image. All that we need to do still is draw in our center lines. So let's do the center lines. So I'm going to go to my line tool, I'm going to select the line tool, and then I'm going to select the center lines layer. So I've created a center line and I'm making it blue for this exercise. It's all set by layer, And now from this top left intersection, I'm going to drag and snap to the opposite one, escape out of it. And I will do the same now, again selecting the line tool, making sure it's on the center lines layer, from the bottom left to the top right, draw in that line, escape out of it, and now I have my center lines. Now if you've watched my previous tutorials, you would know we can change the intensity of our center lines, and that's what I would like to do now. So I'm going to use my selector tool, zoom in on those lines, and I'm going to click and drag to have that selection active. Now there's a yellow dot as a reference point. You can either right click on it or double click on it. I'm going to go and click right click and then go to properties. If you double click on it, it will bring up the same properties window. And now I'm going to select pen, and as you would know from my previous videos, I always select the third one from the top down for printing purposes because it prints out best on paper, and I always have a line selected. And then my dash scale, I'm going to use 0.3. This you will have to do on your own preference. I'm using 0.3 as a reference and everything else is correct, so I say okay. Once I've clicked off that, my center lines now looks a lot better than what it used to, and the intensity is a bit better. But now I also want to extend the center lines a little bit past the outer edges of my drawing as we normally do. So now I'm going to do it in a different way. So I could have just gone and manually selected the line length tool and extended those lines as far as I want them and estimated with the eye. But I want to do that more accurate. So what I'm going to do is select the circle construction tool, and from the center I'm going to just measure what's the distance there. It says 56.6. So if I were to add, let's say 5 millimeters, any distance that you want to, I'm going to say, let's say 61, and enter. That now gives me a reference point of equal distance to each one of my center lines. So I'm going to use the line length tool now, and I'm going to properly lengthen it to the distance that I'll require. Every time you have to select the length tool again so that you can extend that line to the desired distance. Now that I have done that, all of these water lines are very troublesome, so I'm going to clear them now by going to edit, clear all constructions. That cleans up my canvas. As a bonus, I'm going to show you now how to add the dimensions here as well. So what I'm going to do is use the orthogonal tool. From my previous videos, you would know that if you want to set the default properties of any of the tools, you could right click on it. So I'm going to right click on the orthogonal measuring tool just to make sure that all my dimensions are set the way that I want it. I'm going to start off with the pen. There's nothing I'm going to change there. Format, I want my size to be 4 millimeters. For the text, I want standard text style 4 millimeters. I don't want a frame around the text. I want there to be a 2 millimeter text gap, so all of these are set correctly, and I want the text to be above the dimension line. So all of these settings are set correct. At advanced format, all of these are good for me to go. I am going to say OK. Now that I have my default dimensions set correctly, I'm going to use the orthogonal tool, and I'm going to make sure that I go now to my dimensions layer. Everything's set by layer. I'm going to snap to that reference point there, select that distance from to there and select that distance, and I'm going to pull it out. Now you see there's a decimal, so that's one that I've missed on the setting, so I don't want that decimal, I just want the unit. To fix that, I'm going to click on the dimension. I'm right clicking on the yellow dot, say properties. At units and tolerance, I'm going to change my precision to 0 and say OK. that will change it just to a unit. You can see that the leader gap is 2 millimeters there and 2 millimeters there. My text is above the dimension line. Let's do a couple more of the dimensions. So I'm going to right click on my orthogonal, and I'm going to make sure that here by unit tolerance I have set the precision to 0, so that that's my default. If I want to measure the distance, I select the orthogonal dimension tool, snap to that point and stretch it to there, snap there, and I add it to there. I can also do the same on that side. And I can do the same with any of the other dimensions that I would require. So let me show you a tricky one that's here on the inside. You can draw in the dimensions yourself, or you can still use your dimensions tool. In this case, I'm going to make use of the parallel dimension tool. So I'm going to select that reference point there, and I'm going to snap it to there and draw it in on that space there. So that is one way that you can make sure that your dimensions is parallel to the given line that you are indicating. And that is all for this demonstration. Thank you for watching. Have a great time.